Hi, my name is Vince Sheehan and I'd like to talk today about Haydn's 103rd Symphony in E-flat major, the Drumroll as it's nicknamed. And I'd like to go through each of the four movements looking at the structure of the music, because I do believe that having some understanding of musical form can greatly aid our appreciation and enjoyment of classical music. And particularly with a composer like Haydn, where his music relies so much on an abstract interior logic within the symphonic argument of the music. Haydn, of course, is the father of the symphony. His 104 plus symphonies have been the bedrock really for other composers to build on. You might think of his younger contemporaries, Mozart, Beethoven of course, but then stretching through to Schubert, Schumann, Mendelssohn, Brahms, all the way up to Bruckner and Mahler, Sibelius, Shostakovich. Everyone really owes a debt to Haydn. He perfected the form and rightly is regarded as the first great symphonic master. The 103rd Symphony is one of the so-called 12 London symphonies. They're the last 12 Haydn wrote. And they're called the London Symphonies because Haydn was invited to come to London twice, once in 1791 to 92 and then 1794 to 95, whereby the eager English public had the opportunity to listen to these new symphonies which Haydn had composed for these visits. And indeed he composed while he was in England as well. He was invited over by the great impresario Johann Peter Salomon. The symphonies were, great successes by and large, and 103 is no exception. It was written in the winter of 1794, over into the early months of 1795, and it's premiered in 1795 with Haydn himself directing at the forte piano, and with the assistance of Viotti, who was the concert master, the leader of the orchestra, which was a very large orchestra by Haydn's day. It was about 60 players. Viotti, of course, has this wonderful solo written for him in the second movement of this symphony. It received rapturous applause. It was well regarded and liked by the public. And when Haydn went back to Vienna, he actually cut out a few bars in the finale, and that's the version we mostly hear today. So why is it called the drum roll? Well, basically the symphony begins with just a solo timpani part, just doing a drum roll, literally. And there's some freedom about how this is played actually. Sometimes there's a crescendo from piano to fortissimo. Sometimes there's more of a hairpin dynamic, kind of rising to forte in the middle of the roll and dying away. So when you listen to the symphony, listen to that famous solo and see how it's approached. Like most of Haydn's late symphonies, the first movement is in sonata form. Well, all of them are in sonata form, but has a slow introduction, which is common in the late Haydn symphonies. And the slow introduction begins with this theme, which is very reminiscent of plain chant. It goes like this. Commentators have long suggested that actually this melody is very much calls to mind the Dies Irae chant from the Requiem Mass, which of course goes like this. Which you might recognise as being used by Berlioz or Rachmaninoff, Liszt, as well as other composers. And indeed, the first four notes of Haydn's melody are the same as the Dies Irae chant. Then it changes. So yeah, it's quite an interesting parallel there in the beginning of this symphony. Haydn then, we get to the first subject, and now we're in E flat proper, and we are in 6/8 time. There's this wonderful dance quality to this movement, and we begin with the first subject, which goes like this. And so on. Real generous spirit in this music, as is often the case with Haydn. He seems to kind of, there's like this exuberance of ideas in his music. The transition is quite lengthy in this movement actually. Begins like this. Sorry. Then the first subject again, draws on the first subject, this transition, but then interestingly we have this quote from the introduction, that dies irae idea. Did you hear it? Originally it's this, different key. Do you remember? That's recalled in this transition. Eventually we get to the second subject, this wonderful waltz-like idea. And so on. Really lovely, joyful music. We're in B flat major, of course, now, as you'd expect, the second subject. The development is, you know, as you'd expect in a Haydn symphony, inventive, you know, unexpected modulations here and there. There is actually, we hear again a quote from the introduction, that plain chant dies irae melody. We also hear the second subject in the development in D flat major, a lovely kind of slide into that key. Eventually we get to the recapitulation. We hear the first subject, second subject in the tonic, as you'd expect, and then we have a coda, which is in two parts. The first part of the coda is, again, like the introduction, including the drum roll again. It's really lovely to hear that again at the end of this movement. And then the second part of the coda is based on that transition again, which of course, remember, is based on that dies irae idea. And so on. Yeah, so that's the end of the first movement of this wonderful symphony. The second movement, in contrast, is a double theme and variations. There's two. Haydn used this a fair bit in his music. We have two themes which are played in alternation, and each time they're varied. Apparently, these two themes in this movement are based on Croatian folk songs. We're in C minor to begin with. This is the first melody, which we might call A. Of that melody. In contrast, the second theme is actually rather similar, but it's in the major mode, C major. Bird-like quality, song-like quality to it. We go back then to the variations. The first variation in the C minor melody A, and then we go back to the B melody. This is where this violin solo, written for the leader of the London Orchestra, Viotti, this is his moment to shine. lovely flowing lines, solo violin part. You have a return to the A melody again, the second variation, which is rather more militaristic in tone this time, and eventually we reach this rather lengthy coda, which seems to combine both melodies. By the way, the description for each of the movements are down below if you wish to, with the bar numbers, if you wish to follow the music with a score or even without a score. Please check that out. The third movement is a delightful minuet, as you'd expect, in ternary form, A, B, which is the trio section, and then back to A again. And the first, the A melody goes like this. Da-dum-bum, da-dum. There's like this echo effect there. We hear that. The trio, in contrast, is like this, a lot quieter. That carries on, we have a repeat to A. Very simple movement, but very charming. The finale is not simple. The finale is Haydn and is kind of most inventive. It's a real tour de force of Haydn's genius, this movement, because it's one of Haydn's monothematic movements. What do I mean by that? Well, it's a movement just based really on one idea, one melody, and Haydn just spins it out in this miraculous way over the course of this great finale. Essentially, it's a sonata rondo form. So it's a rondo. This melody keeps coming back, but with elements of development. There's a development section in it, and but of course the B section in a different key is still based on the melody from the A section. If you follow the description below, it's the best thing to do. But we have this horn call at the beginning, just 2 bars. Or 4 bars rather, and then the melody comes in. It's just this. And that's basically it. That's the movement. That melody is enough for Haydn to sustain him to create this masterpiece of wit and inventiveness. The second subject, if you like, or the B section I should say, because it's more of a rondo than anything, again is based on that melody, but we're in B flat major. This. It's like a Mannheim skyrocket hit. And so on. And then eventually the music, we have this A, that melody keeps coming back again and again. We have the C section, which is kind of a development, and eventually we get to this rather glorious coda. And that's the symphony. It really is a terrific work. I think Haydn sometimes, in this day and age, perhaps is at risk of being overlooked, perhaps because of the, I don't know, but I could be wrong there, I don't know, but I sense that he hasn't kind of got the draw of a Mozart or Beethoven maybe in the 21st century, but his symphonies are absolutely marvellous, and I do recommend, if you don't know them very well, come to listen to 103, the Drumroll. It really is a great work. I hope you found this video helpful. Please like and subscribe if you feel moved to, and if you have any suggestions for any further works you'd like me to look at, please put them in the comments below. Thank you very much.